You're definitely going to want to watch this. Vivek Ramaswamy just gave voice to an idea that desperately needed to be articulated from the Republican side, and that's the uneasy question of racial and gender diversity quotas at universities in this country. This happened at a CNN town hall just a few weeks ago, and I feel like answering this question takes a complex mix of personal experience, empathy, and a firm will that not many in the party have been able to do, so let's get into it.
As president, what specific strategies would you implement to promote diversity and inclusion in leadership roles within both public and private sectors? How do you plan to support the advancement of underrepresented groups, including women, in these areas?
So I'll be very honest with you. I'm going to share with you Thomas Sowell quote that stuck with me. If you care about somebody, you tell them the truth, or at least what you believe. If you care about yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. And I have a feeling I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear on this one. So I think the diversity, equity, inclusion agenda has been abused. In the name of diversity, we have, at many of our universities, totally sacrificed diversity of thought.
There's a reason Vivek brought up Thomas Sowell. He's someone that has lived on both sides of the political fence and lends so much more weight against this warped idea of diversity that's captured our psyche, even once calling it balkanization rather than diversity. Vivek has to be one of very few people out there of academia and active politics to say it out loud. The fact is, affirmative action or any DEI-based policies don't exist in a vacuum. They're nestled in a very intersectionalist view of history and politics that does great injustice to the individualist spirit of our meritocracy and legal system. An incredible quote from Jordan Peterson comes to mind, quote, "The logical conclusion of intersectionality is individuality." In politics today, it's Vivek who's driving that point home in the public sphere.
In the name of equity, we've perpetuated a lot of inequity and inequality of opportunity through affirmative action and otherwise. In the name of inclusion, we've created a new culture of exclusion where certain points of view aren't welcome. So especially in a university setting, what do I care about? Diversity of viewpoint. This is important, actually. I think diversity of viewpoint is part of what this country was built on. Well, the best way to foster diversity of viewpoint is to screen candidates for the diversity of their views, actually. Many look at the board members of many universities. You're going to go through their partisan affiliation. It's not 80-20. It's going to be like 90-10 in the other direction. That's completely at odds with the representation of this country.
I don't think any of it is a secret, and yet no one chooses to talk about it. There's a suffocating and comfortist culture on college campuses today, not because there's not enough racial diversity, but because there's not enough intellectual diversity. A study from 2016 found that on American college campuses, professors that self-identify as liberal Democrats outnumbered conservatives by a ratio of 12-1. In our centers of education, which should be revered for their diverse clash of viewpoints, DEI policies have led to a place where everybody looks different but thinks the same. In a country where overall more than 2/3 of people either identify as politically moderate or conservative, perhaps college and university campuses should instead work to reflect that ratio instead.
And so I think the best way to screen candidates for the diversity of their experiences is to actually ask them about the diversity of their experiences. And I think the use of these racial and gender quota systems, I think have actually created a new form of racism in the United States that otherwise would not have existed. It's sad to me. I mean, I've hired, not because I was thinking about it consciously, plenty of black women in different positions of authority in this campaign or other companies or whatever. And I can tell you it saddens me when people look at somebody who I hired on the basis of merit and say that they only got that job because of their race or gender. That doesn't do anybody a favor.
And that's what's sad. It's birthed a litany of unanswered questions and new race problems from this desire to overcorrect for history. It's given rise to terms like diversity hire almost being used as a pejorative, and people made to feel like they don't belong in a workplace or college campus, even if they made it there on merit. And that is what should always have been expected. There's unintended consequences even to the best intentioned policies. Positively discriminating for someone is just the other side of the coin for negatively discriminating against someone. And perhaps the least noticed consequence of this drive for diversity is that the people that can make it on that basis constantly have to second guess whether it would have been possible otherwise.
So I think if we restore true meritocracy in this country and embrace true diversity of thought, chances are we're actually going to have a bunch of different shades of melanin and a range of genders in different positions. But let it be not the goal. Let it just be a byproduct of actually selecting for people who are the best person for the job, and especially in a university setting, diverse viewpoints as well. That's what I'll say.
Goes back to that same point. Who said diversity and meritocracy were ever mutually exclusive in the first place? Why can't we have both? There's a deep-seated faith in the American spirit where that comes from, that we've shed our past baggage of history and truly developed a vision that sees people for their capability and value rather than their skin color. And the best part of doing that is it results in a diversity that is truly reflective of the country, and one that comes about naturally rather than being foisted upon us through top-down policies that breed resentment and division. Perhaps Vivek Ramaswamy, being the closest in age to the generation currently in college and university campuses, is best placed to make that point. I think the best part of watching this town hall moment was the fact that Vivek went against the grain of the questioner and wasn't afraid to tell her what he really thinks. Despite it being unpopular in some circles, there's a firmness of conviction and intellectual integrity that perhaps we as a nation right now need in office.